welcome to the deep dive.
Uh,
We're going to be exploring those weird moments like where you're just like, no way, that can't just be coincidence. We've got this really cool transcript, and it's kind of like a chatty video
yeah.
where two people are talking about all these events that make you question if there's something more going on behind the scenes of everyday life.
Yeah, it's interesting how often we dismiss these occurrences as just random chance.
Yeah, totally.
Our goal today is to kind of like unpack that assumption
Okay.
and see if maybe we're missing some really crucial connections or
Yeah.
perhaps something far more profound is at play.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of like, sometimes I'll think of someone and then they'll
Right.
text me just like out of the blue.
Oh, yeah.
It's always such a trip.
Yeah.
Our source material dives into psychology,
Mm-hmm.
even touches on physics and ancient Chinese philosophy.
Oh.
Talk about a wild ride.
Yeah.
To kind of quick things off, they actually share some examples
Okay.
of these head-scratching moments, like saying someone's name right as they call, or having a dream that seems to predict the future.
Wow.
They even have this funny story
Okay.
about one of the speakers predicting their future spouse would have a square face,
Oh, wow.
which, get this, turned out to be true.
That's certainly a memorable image, but,
Yeah.
beyond the humor,
Right.
these anecdotes highlight a universal experience, that
Yeah.
sense of awe we feel when confronted with the seemingly impossible.
Oh, for sure.
And that's actually where Carl Jung comes in.
Okay.
The famous psychologist who dedicated years to studying these meaningful coincidences,
Right.
which he called synchronicity.
Ooh, synchronicity.
Yeah.
Okay. I've heard that word before,
Mm-hmm.
but to be honest, I'm not totally clear on what it means.
That's a great point. It's easy to just throw these terms around,
Yeah.
but let's actually break it down.
Good.
Jung, who interestingly grew up in a family that kind of blended scientific and mystical perspectives, proposed that synchronicity isn't about a simple cause and effect relationship between events.
Yeah.
Instead, it's about a shared meaning that connects them.
Okay, so it's not like saying someone's name causes them to call.
Right.
But rather that the shared meaning, like that person,
Exactly.
creates a link in our minds,
Yeah.
making the timing feel uncanny.
Precisely.
So, yeah.
To grasp this concept further, we need to kind of delve into Jung's model of the psyche,
Okay.
which he divided into 3 levels.
Okay.
The conscious mind, the personal unconscious,
Right.
and the deeper interconnected collective unconscious.
Okay, so the collective unconscious,
Yeah.
what exactly is that? Is it like a giant universal mind that we're all tapping into?
It's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
Jung believed the collective unconscious is like a reservoir of shared experiences, archetypes, and symbols that are common to all humanity.
Okay.
It's where those universal fears, dreams, and patterns of behavior originate. Think of it like a vast interconnected network beneath the surface of our individual minds. And this is where things get really mind-blowing.
Okay.
Because Jung suggests this collective unconscious is the source of synchronicity.
So when we experience a coincidence,
Right.
we're actually catching a glimpse
Right.
of this deeper layer of interconnectedness.
Exactly.
That's wild.
And they bring up some captivating examples to illustrate this idea.
Right.
One that particularly stands out involves a patient who describes a very vivid image of a sun with a rod sticking out of it.
Okay.
Later, Jung stumbles upon this exact image
Wow.
in a Greek text the patient had never encountered.
Wow. What are the chances? I feel like I've experienced that kind of thing too. Like
Yeah.
reading a book and finding a passage that perfectly describes something I've been going through. It's like the book was speaking directly to me.
That feeling is at the heart of synchronicity.
Yeah.
It's that sense that there's like a hidden meaning or purpose behind seemingly random events.
Yeah.
And the examples keep coming.
Okay.
We talk about the classic story of the golden scarab beetle. A patient dreams of this beetle.
Right?
And at that very moment, a real beetle crashes against the window.
What?
They also point out the remarkable similarities between global myths and ancient structures like pyramids,
Okay.
despite a lack of contact between those cultures.
Wow.
Could this point towards a shared wellspring of human experience residing within the collective unconscious?
It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
right? And then there's this intriguing Bubakiki effect they talk about,
Oh, yeah.
which, by the way, you can try out for yourself.
Right.
We'll drop a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
You
It's
know-
a fun and simple experiment
Okay.
that reveals something fundamental about how our minds work.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, it demonstrates how we universally connect
Yeah.
certain sounds and shapes,
Okay.
hinting at deeper connections
Right.
in how we perceive and organize information as humans.
Right.
It's these shared patterns of thinking and experiencing the world
Right.
that Jung believed were reflections of the collective unconscious.
That's so cool. So we're not just individuals,
Right.
but also part of this larger interconnected web of consciousness.
Exactly.
It's like we're all swimming in the same mental ocean.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the implications are truly profound.
Okay.
If we're all connected in this way,
Right.
what does that mean for our understanding of ourselves,
Yeah.
our relationships, and even our potential as a species?
Okay, now my mind is officially blown.
Yeah.
So how does this all tie back to those seemingly random coincidences we were talking about earlier?
Well, what if those coincidences are actually glimpses into this deeper layer of reality, this interconnected web of meaning that Jung called the collective unconscious?
Okay, you totally piqued my curiosity. Let's dive deeper into this rabbit hole.
Let's do it.
All right, so we're all connected through this invisible web
Right.
of shared experiences and meaning the collective unconscious.
That's right.
But if that's true, why don't we see more evidence of it in our daily lives? Like, shouldn't we all be having prophetic dreams and winning the lottery with our newfound psychic powers?
That's a fantastic question, and it gets to the heart of how subtle and nuanced this concept really is.
Yeah.
The source material actually addresses that, pointing out that it's not about consciously controlling this collective energy for personal gain.
Okay.
Think about it. Our conscious desires, like winning the lottery, are often quite different from the deeper currents flowing through the collective unconscious.
Yeah.
It's less about bending the universe to our will and more about recognizing the patterns, the synchronicities that already exist.
So it's not as simple as wishing for something to happen and then expecting the universe to deliver.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we learn to recognize those patterns and tap into that deeper level of meaning?
They suggest that it starts with paying attention to those subtle nudges, those gut feelings that we often brush aside.
Right.
It's about becoming more aware of the synchronicities in our lives and being open to the possibility that they might hold significance.
You know, that reminds me of a time when I had this overwhelming urge to call a friend I hadn't spoken to in ages.
Okay.
And it felt so random. But I went with it.
Right.
And it turned out she was going through a really tough time.
Oh, wow.
And desperately needed someone to talk to.
That's a perfect example of how those intuitive nudges can manifest.
Right.
They might seem illogical or random at the time, but they often lead us to exactly where we need to be.
Wow.
And, they even suggest that certain personality types or life experiences might make some individuals more sensitive to these synchronicities than others.
Interesting.
There's also the idea that practices like meditation, which quiet the conscious mind, might help us become more attuned to these subtler signals from the collective unconscious.
So it's not necessarily about developing supernatural ability, but rather about cultivating a deeper awareness and sensitivity to the world around us and even within ourselves.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we're not just isolated individuals, but part of a vast and interconnected web of being.
Okay.
And they bring up some fascinating examples of people who seem to have tapped into this interconnectedness in remarkable ways. Individuals who consistently have precognitive dreams.
Wow.
Or make uncannily accurate predictions.
That's wild.
But it's important to note, they're not suggesting everyone can suddenly become a fortune teller.
Of course.
Instead, they encourage us to approach those moments of synchronicity with curiosity and an open mind, even journaling them to see if any patterns or deeper meaning emerge over time.
So instead of dismissing those coincidences as mere flukes, we should be looking for the threads that connect them.
Yeah.
The underlying story they might be telling.
Exactly. Because what if these synchronicities are actually glimpses into a deeper interconnected reality?
Yeah.
A reality that we're all a part of, whether we're consciously aware of it or not.
Yeah.
And here's where they introduce another layer to this already mind-blowing conversation.
Okay.
The ancient Chinese I Ching.
Oh, wow. The I Ching? Isn't that a book of divination?
Yeah.
I've always been curious about it,
Yeah.
but also a little skeptical.
That skepticism is understandable.
Yeah.
It's easy to dismiss these ancient practices as superstition.
Right.
But what if they hold a deeper truth that we're only beginning to understand? Jung himself studied the I Ching extensively.
Right.
And the source material suggests that it might actually be a way
Wow.
of tapping into the collective unconscious.
Wait, so instead of seeing fortune-telling as just some mystical mumbo-jumbo,
Right.
they're proposing it could be a real way
Exactly.
of accessing a deeper level of knowledge and understanding.
That's the idea. They draw parallels to shamans,
Right.
oracles, and other figures throughout history
Right.
who seem to possess knowledge beyond the ordinary.
Right.
What if instead of just making things up, they were actually tapping into a collective wisdom,
Yeah.
a source of information that transcends our individual minds?
Okay.
It's a radical concept, but it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Yeah.
But if this collective unconscious is so powerful and accessible, why aren't we all walking around with psychic powers predicting the future left and right?
Well, as we were discussing earlier, it's not simply a matter of flipping a switch. They propose it requires a certain level of awareness, sensitivity, and perhaps even training to access this deeper level of knowing.
Yeah.
They point out that even those who have strong intuitive abilities often doubt themselves or dismiss their insights.
So it's about learning to trust those gut feelings, those moments of synchronicity, and seeing them as potentially meaningful.
That's right.
Rather than just random occurrences.
Absolutely. They suggest that practices like meditation and mindfulness might help us cultivate that awareness and become more attuned to those subtle signals from the collective unconscious.
It's almost like we're all swimming in this ocean of collective wisdom.
Right.
But most of us are just splashing around on the surface, oblivious to the depths below.
That's a brilliant analogy. But imagine if we could learn to dive deeper to access that vast reservoir of knowledge and interconnectedness.
Right.
What might we be capable of achieving as individuals and as a species?
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So what's the takeaway here? What should we do with this newfound knowledge about coincidence and the collective unconscious? What are the practical implications of all of this?
I think the most important takeaway is to start paying attention.
Okay.
Don't just dismiss those seemingly random events as mere chance.
Right.
Look for the connections, the underlying meaning, the story that's trying to emerge.
Right.
Journal your dreams.
Okay.
Note those moments of synchronicity and see if any patterns appear over time. You might be surprised by what you discover.
That's such a great point. I'm already starting to think about all those coincidences in my life differently. I'm going to grab a notebook and start jotting down those weird little synchronicities.
Right.
Who knows what I might uncover?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've been diving deep into this whole idea that those coincidences we experience might actually be glimpses into a deeper interconnected reality. Jung's collective unconscious.
Yes.
And we're exploring how ancient practices, like using the I Ching, could be a way of tapping into that universal wellspring of wisdom.
Yeah.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
It is.
But it's also incredibly exciting.
It is exciting. And it challenges us to rethink our understanding of reality.
Okay.
Instead of seeing ourselves as isolated individuals,
Right.
we can begin to see ourselves as part of this vast interconnected network of consciousness.
Yeah.
Like suddenly realizing we've been living in a black and white world,
Yeah.
and now someone's handed us a pair of 3D glasses, and we're seeing all the vibrant colors and textures for the first time.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right.
But here's a question that keeps popping into my head.
Oh, okay.
If this collective unconscious is so powerful, why do we seem to have such limited access to it?
Right.
Why don't we see more evidence of its influence in our lives?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one that the source material explores as well.
Right.
It seems that accessing this deeper level of consciousness isn't as simple as flipping a switch.
Right.
They propose it requires a certain level of awareness, sensitivity, and perhaps even training.
Okay.
And even for those who do have strong intuitive abilities, there's often a tendency to doubt or dismiss those insights, to rationalize them away as mere coincidence.
So it's not just about having the ability, but also about recognizing and trusting those moments when the collective unconscious seems to be whispering to us.
Yeah.
It reminds me of how sometimes I'll have a dream
Right.
that feels incredibly vivid and meaningful, but then I wake up and try to explain it away.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it was just a weird dream.
Right.
What if those dreams are actually
Exactly.
trying to tell us something important?
It's about learning to pay attention
Yeah.
to those subtle signals, those synchronicities, and not automatically dismissing them as random occurrences. It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity and wonder about the world around us, within ourselves.
Okay.
And here's where those practices like meditation and mindfulness come into play.
Okay.
By quieting the constant chatter of the conscious mind, we might create more space for those deeper insights to emerge.
It's almost like we're tuning our internal radio.
I love that analogy.
To a different frequency, one that's broadcasting from the collective unconscious.
And as we become more attuned to that frequency, we might start picking up on signals we never noticed before. We might start seeing connections and patterns where we once saw only randomness.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners?
Okay.
What can they do to start exploring this idea of the collective unconscious and its potential impact on their lives?
The most important thing is to simply start paying attention.
Okay.
Don't dismiss those seemingly random events as mere chance. Look for the connections, the underlying meaning, the story that's trying to unfold. Journal your dreams. Note those moments of synchronicity and see what patterns emerge over time. You might be surprised by what you discover.
And maybe, just maybe, by paying closer attention to those synchronicities, we can start to tap into a deeper level of knowing a collective wisdom that has the potential to guide us towards a more meaningful and interconnected existence.
For sure.
It's almost like those coincidences are little winks from the universe, reminding us that we're all in this together, part of something much greater than ourselves.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome.
So, dear listeners, as you go about your day, keep your eyes and minds open. You never know what synchronicities might be waiting just around the corner, whispering secrets from the collective unconscious.
Ooh, I like that.
Until next time, happy diving.
Right. Sounds good. I'm ready to dive in.